And really, I had only 3 options that I faced. One, I could do nothing. And after the Khurban, that wasn't an option.
And you had family members that died in the show?
A lot. And I had one that was on a voyage of the damned that, thank God, jumped ship off Trinidad and was sponsored by Lyndon Johnson into the United States. And he later more or less directed the 8th Air Force's bombing campaign of Cologne, where he came from. And I said, wow, you actually saved the cathedral, because it was the only thing left standing in central Cologne. He said, no, I tried really hard to hit that place, but for some reason it just didn't work out. So yeah, we lost everybody except for 3 relatives that got out of Germany.
And they told you, if you see something, do something.
No, I grew up with that, that it was drilled into me, personal responsibility. That one of the major mistakes the American Jewish community made during the Second World War was that they were more loyal to Roosevelt than they were to their own people, our people. So it was drilled.
Actually, a lot of things haven't changed.
Most things haven't changed. So as a result, my father, Alev Shalom, warned me not to go into the intelligence field, because he said, you will be faced with that issue. Who are you going to defend? Your people or your boss? So the first option wasn't an option. The second option was to basically not do anything myself, but to go forward and try to work within the system. But I realized that it was the system itself that had instituted this undeclared intelligence embargo against Israel, so I would have been putting my head on a chopping block. I remember one of the first experiences I had with exactly what the intelligence community felt towards Israel was when I and several other new hires were asked to do some evaluations of old incidents that happened, and I unfortunately drew the liberty. So I looked at everything that was in the files, and I basically wrote a report that had exonerated Israel for what happened. It was a mistake. And the officer that was conducting this exam looked at me really hard and said, whose side are you on?
Wow.
So I said to him the truth. As an intelligence officer, we owe our absolute, unqualified loyalty to the truth. And he said, I've got my eye on you. Okay, that's fine. So that there was no way of me working within the system. And I went all the way up to the Secretary of Defense's office to see if we could do something about this problem with the undeclared intelligence embargo, and there was just doors slammed in my face, and it wasn't going to go anywhere. So the third option was to do something myself, and it was not an option that I readily accepted, because there was a very high degree of risk involved with this. And one of the things I tried to do to mitigate the risk was to make sure that all the information that I eventually passed to Israel was supposed to have been passed to Israel. And when I was indicted, a lot of people don't realize this, but my actual indictment says very clearly that I committed a crime without intent to harm the United States. That's a crucial distinction. Why? Because we all understand that there's some information which is so sensitive and so potentially dangerous. If shared with anybody, even our closest allies, and I say I get confused with pronouns sometimes, with the closest allies of the United States, would do incalculable damage to the national security. And in that case, if I had violated that understanding, I should have and would have been charged with intent to harm the United States. Even though that wasn't my intent, the damage I would have caused by sharing information that never should have been shared, ever, would have justified that kind of indictment. So I wasn't charged with intent to harm, again, which is a crucial distinction that most people simply either don't know about or don't care to factor into my actions. The other thing has to do with the alleged money involved in the operation, in my operation. Most of my operational time with Israel was done for free. I never received a penny. But there came a point in time where I was asked to consider fully crossing the line and becoming a full-scale Israeli intelligence officer, field officer. And I had already basically crossed that line. So I said yes. And so at that point I received, just as CIA field agents do, who work in other jobs, front jobs, a salary. It was taxed. I paid bituach liumi. I paid everything. And so when I was eventually caught, in the absence of any hard information showing damage to the United States, what prosecutors do in that case is they go after the character of the agent. And in my case, by darkening my character and my motives, they hope to kind of sully Israel's reputation in the United States. Well, the sentencing judge, who was definitely no friend of mine, refused to fine me. Because as he said in court, I have two choices. I can either fine Mr. Pollard as a mercenary, or I can give him a life sentence as an ideologue. So luckily he gave me a life sentence as an ideologue, and I thanked him. Everybody considered that sarcastic on my part, but I actually was very appreciative that he did that. But again, this is another point that a lot of people just don't either know about or don't care about. I think I'm the only spy that was never fined by the government for his actions. So there was that third option of actually doing something myself. And the more I got into it, the more I realized the nature, the full scope of the betrayal. And it was very, very, very frightening. There was one particularly egregious moment when I was arguing why a certain piece of technology wasn't shared with Israel, according to the exchange agreement. And their attitude was, well, let them lose a couple airplanes and they'll figure out, how to counter this technology. And I'm thinking to myself, that could be my cousin flying that airplane. And so it just kind of confirmed in my own mind that I had to go forward with what I was doing. There was no prevarication on my part as far as holding back things or stopping from acting. I had to go forward. And so...